Here's what most people miss about game theory, and why it matters more than you think. At its core, game theory is the science of strategy. It's the study of how decisions are made when outcomes depend not just on your own choices, but on what others do too. It's less about playing games and more about recognizing that life is full of them. Whether it's individuals, businesses, or nations, everyone is constantly adjusting their moves based on what they expect others to do. Game theory is the lens we use to understand those interactions. Picture a four-way stop. No lights, no signs, just four drivers staring at each other, trying to decide who goes first. Your decision when to move isn't made in isolation. It depends on how you read the others. That quiet standoff? That's a game. And game theory helps us make sense of it. To do that, it breaks situations down into key parts. Players, the decision makers. Strategies, the options each player has. Payoffs, the results of those combined choices. Game theory doesn't judge what's right or wrong. It simply shows what happens when everyone tries to make the smartest move, knowing others are doing the same. It reveals patterns: trust, betrayal, bluffing, hesitation, not just as behavior but as strategy. Some games happen once, others repeat. Some are competitive, others invite cooperation. But in all of them, decisions ripple. And understanding those ripples helps us navigate the bigger picture. Game theory is the quiet structure behind a job interview, a pricing war, or that tense moment at the stop sign. It's not about playing games. It's about understanding the ones we're already in. Why does game theory matter? Most decisions don't happen in isolation. You make a move, someone reacts, and suddenly it's not just your choice anymore. You're part of a system. That's why game theory matters. Game theory gives us a framework for thinking about decisions where outcomes depend on more than one person. It helps explain why we compete in some situations and cooperate in others, why trust forms, and why it sometimes fails, why even smart choices can lead to bad results. The power of game theory isn't just in what people should do, it's in predicting what they will do, especially when everyone's trying to outguess each other. Take something simple, standing in line. If someone cuts ahead, your brain instantly starts calculating. Do you confront them? Is it worth it? What will they do? You're not just reacting, you're playing a game. And you're thinking strategically whether you realize it or not. Now apply that same thinking to business. If one company cuts prices, the rest might follow. But if they all drop prices, everyone loses profits. Each wants to win. But the best move depends on what the others are likely to do. Game theory helps make sense of that complexity. It works the same way in global politics. Imagine two countries stockpiling weapons. Neither wants war, but neither wants to be left vulnerable. So they both keep arming, even when peace would benefit both. That's a strategic dilemma, and game theory helps explain the logic behind it. But it's not just about conflict. Game theory sheds light on teamwork, negotiations, alliances, even parenting. It helps us understand how people make deals, when they hold firm and when they give ground. It's not about manipulation, it's about awareness. Game theory encourages thinking a few steps ahead. It reveals how your best move often depends on what others might do and how your actions might change theirs. In a world full of uncertainty, it doesn't give you perfect answers, but it does offer clarity. And sometimes clarity is the most powerful tool of all. Where did game theory begin? Game theory didn't start with video games or board games. It began with a question rooted in math and strategy. How do people make smart decisions when they're not playing alone? The idea had been floating around for centuries, in military planning, political tactics, and games like chess. But it wasn't formalized until 1944, when mathematician John von Neumann and economist Oscar Morgenstern published The Theory of Games and Economic Behavior. That book transformed strategy into science. They weren't trying to guess what people might do. They wanted models, structured systems that could explain and even predict how decisions play out when goals collide. At the heart of their early work was the zero-sum game, a situation where one player's gain is exactly another's loss. Think poker, chess, or war. Von Neumann had already proven a key insight years earlier. In any two-player, zero-sum game, there's at least one solution, a strategy, for each player that protects them from being outmaneuvered. That idea laid the foundation for modern game theory. But the real breakthrough came in the 1950s, thanks to another mathematician, John Nash. He introduced the Nash equilibrium, a point in a game where no player can improve their outcome by changing strategy, unless the others change too. It wasn't about winners and losers anymore. It was about balance, realistic patterns people settle into, even if they're not perfect. From there, game theory spread fast. Economists used it to study markets. Political scientists applied it to elections and diplomacy. Biologists used it to explain how animals cooperate or compete for survival. What started as abstract math became a way to understand human behavior. Game theory gave us more than equations. It gave us a new perspective, that even in chaos, there's a structure, and if you look closely enough, it can be modeled, explained, and sometimes predicted. What were the biggest breakthroughs? Game theory didn't just evolve. It was transformed by a handful of breakthroughs that reshaped how we think about decisions and strategy. One of the biggest, the Nash equilibrium. It changed everything. Instead of focusing only on winners and losers, it showed that people often settle into stable patterns, not because they're ideal, but because no one has anything to gain by moving alone. That insight helped game theory move from abstract theory to practical application in business, politics, and even everyday life. Another leap came from Thomas Schelling, who introduced the concept of strategic signaling. He showed that what people suggest, through silence, threats, promises, or posture, can shape outcomes just as much as their actual moves. In diplomacy or negotiations, it's often the message between the lines that defines the game. Then came repeated games, explored deeply by Robert Axelrod. His question was simple: can cooperation survive in a world driven by self-interest? Through simulations, he showed how strategies like tit for tat could build trust over time. Cooperation didn't have to be enforced. It could emerge naturally, especially when players expected to interact again. Later breakthroughs pushed game theory into biology, psychology, and beyond. It helped explain why animals fight or cooperate, why humans sometimes choose fairness over logic, and why emotion plays a strategic role in decision-making. Each of these advances added something new, not just to the theory, but to how we see the world. They made game theory more than math. They turned it into a toolbox, a way to understand trust, risk, negotiation, and how people find balance in systems full of tension. Game theory isn't just about solving problems. It's about understanding how people navigate uncertainty together and how structure can emerge, even when no one's in charge. What are the basic elements of any game? Every game in game theory, no matter how complex, starts with a few basic parts. Once you understand them, you can see the structure behind everything from business, rivalries to personal decisions. 1. Players. These are the decision makers. A player can be a person, a company, a government, anyone with choices to make. If 2 friends are splitting a bill, that's 2 players. If 3 firms are competing in a market, that's 3 players. Identifying who's playing is step 1. 2. Strategies. A strategy isn't just a move, it's a full game plan. It covers every action a player might take in every possible situation. In rock, paper, scissors, the strategies are simple. In business or politics, strategies are layered, ranging from cooperation to competition, bold moves to quiet waiting. 3. Payoffs. These are the outcomes. What does each player get based on everyone's choices? A payoff could be money, power, reputation, or even emotional satisfaction. It doesn't have to be numbers. Just a clear way of ranking what matters to each player. 4. Rules. Every game has structure. Some rules are formal, like laws or contracts. Others are unspoken, like social norms or customs. Rules define what's allowed, how players interact, and whether the game is simultaneous, as everyone moves at once, or sequential. Players take turns. 5. Information. This is about what each player knows when making decisions. Some games, like chess, offer perfect information. Everyone sees everything. Others, like poker or real-life negotiations, are games of uncertainty, where players guess based on limited clues. Put these elements together, and you have the full blueprint of a game. Who's playing? What they can do, what they want, how the system works, and what they know. With just these 5 pieces, Game theorists can model everything from casual conversations to geopolitical conflicts. It's a simple framework, but one that helps us make sense of the deep complexity behind human decisions. What is the difference between zero-sum and non-zero-sum games? In many parts of life, one person's win doesn't always mean another's loss, but sometimes it does. That's the key idea behind the difference between zero-sum and non-zero-sum games in game theory. A zero-sum game means the total amount of wins and losses is fixed. Whatever one person gains, another must lose by the same amount. The total always adds up to zero. A classic example is poker. If one player wins $50, it must have come from the others. Success here is only possible at someone else's expense. Another clear example is a sports match. One team wins, the other loses. There's no shared outcome. In zero-sum games, rewards are transferred, not created. That makes these games naturally competitive. They are built in a way where mutual benefit isn't possible. It's always a win-lose situation, and only one side can come out ahead. Every advantage for one is automatically a setback for someone else. Non-zero-sum games, however, operate differently. In these scenarios, everyone can gain or lose together. The total outcome can be more or less than zero. These games allow for flexible results, not fixed ones. For instance, two companies might choose to compete or cooperate. Competing may hurt both, while collaboration could boost both profits. Unlike zero-sum, success here can be shared. A simpler example is two roommates deciding how to split chores. If both pitch in, they enjoy a clean space with less effort. If only one does the work, resentment grows. If neither helps, they both suffer. This is a non-zero-sum setup. Cooperation leads to a better outcome for everyone involved. While selfishness can backfire, knowing the difference between these two kinds of games helps us understand human behavior in all sorts of situations. Zero-sum games lead to secrecy, competition, and defensive strategies. But in non-zero-sum games, openness and teamwork often pay off. Game theory uses this difference to explain why people sometimes choose to cooperate or compete, and how understanding the game can guide better decisions in everything from business deals to international politics. Why is the Nash equilibrium such a big deal? When multiple people are making decisions, they don't act in isolation. Everyone considers what others might do. The Nash equilibrium is a breakthrough concept because it captures this exact scenario. Each player choosing the best strategy they can, based on what others are expected to do. John Nash asked a powerful question. What if no one can do better by changing their mind, assuming everyone else sticks to their choice? That point, where no one has a reason to switch strategies, is the Nash equilibrium. Each person's move is the best possible reaction to the others. Let's use a simple example. Two rival coffee shops on the same street. Each must choose a high or low price. If both go high, they share customers. If one lowers prices, it wins more business. But if both go low, profits drop. Their final pricing choices reflect what they expect the other to do. And once those choices are made, neither wants to change. What makes this concept so powerful is that it doesn't require trust, communication, or cooperation. It applies even when players act only in their own interest. And it doesn't mean the result is ideal, just that it's stable. No one benefits from changing course alone. That's what sets Nash's insight apart. It helps predict real-world behavior, even in complex competitive or partly cooperative situations. Before Nash, game theory mostly focused on pure win-lose outcomes. His idea opened up the field to a wider range of scenarios. Economists, political scientists, and decision-makers began using the Nash equilibrium to model how people behave in markets, elections, and negotiations. It brought game theory closer to how people actually act. More than anything, the Nash equilibrium added predictability. When several outcomes are possible, it narrows the list to what's most likely. It helps explain why certain patterns repeat, even when better options exist. See, it's not about perfection, it's about balance. When everyone tries to do what's best for themselves, and no one has a reason to change, that balance becomes a powerful tool for understanding the world. Why do trust and self-interest clash? Sometimes the best possible outcome is only reachable if people trust each other. But often the biggest reward goes to the person who breaks that trust. That's the tension at the heart of many decisions. And game theory helps reveal how often it shapes our lives. It's the conflict between protecting yourself and taking a chance on cooperation, especially when others are facing the same dilemma. Even when working together would help everyone, doubt creeps in. No one wants to be the one who gets betrayed. You see this in many areas. Two companies could keep prices stable, but if one cheats to gain an edge, the other has to respond. Or take two countries agreeing to cut emissions. If one sticks to the deal and the other breaks it for short-term growth, the whole agreement begins to collapse. This clash is captured in a famous setup called the prisoner's dilemma. Two people can both benefit from trusting each other, but the temptation to look out for themselves leads to worse results. We'll look deeper into that scenario next. But the key idea is this: trust creates value, but it's risky when you can't count on the other side. Whether people choose to cooperate or protect themselves depends a lot on the situation. Will they interact again? Is there a way to enforce fairness? Or are they on their own? These conditions shape behavior. Game theory helps uncover those hidden structures. It shows why people might act selfishly, even if they don't want to, because the design of the game rewards caution over trust. Even smart, well-meaning people can make choices that lead to bad outcomes if the system around them doesn't support cooperation. That's why trust and self-interest often pull in different directions. Understanding this tension can help us design better agreements, rules, and systems that encourage people to work together instead of turning inward. Why does the prisoner's dilemma matter so much? The prisoner's dilemma is one of the simplest ideas in game theory, but it shows up everywhere, from politics to business to daily life. It's important because it captures a difficult truth. Sometimes, doing what seems best for yourself leads to worse results for everyone involved. And once you understand it, you'll start to see its structure all around you. Here's the basic setup. Two people are arrested and questioned separately. If one confesses while the other stays silent, the confessor goes free, and the silent one gets a long sentence. If both confess, they get moderate sentences. If both stay silent, they each get a light punishment. But since they can't talk, each reasons, if the other stays quiet, I should confess and walk free. But if they confess, I should confess too, or get stuck with the worst deal. That logic leads both to confess, resulting in a worse outcome than if they had trusted each other. That's the dilemma. Self-interest pushes both players toward a choice that hurts them. Cooperation could help both, but trust feels unsafe. This simple example reveals a deep insight. Rational choices can lead to irrational outcomes when coordination is missing. This isn't just a story, it mirrors real-world situations. Think of two companies launching ad campaigns. If both go all in, they cancel each other out and waste money. If both hold back, they save. But each fears being outdone. Or consider countries agreeing to climate action. If all cut emissions, everyone benefits. But if one cheats, they still enjoy the cleaner planet, so everyone cheats, and no one benefits. The prisoner's dilemma shows how fragile cooperation can be when trust isn't guaranteed. It explains why smart people or groups sometimes make decisions that don't add up to the best result, not because they're selfish, but because the system encourages caution. It's a timeless model in game theory, helping us understand many of the world's biggest standoffs. From business deals to global conflicts, what can we learn from the Stag Hunt and the chicken game? Not all decisions are about winning or losing. Some are about trust, risk, and who flinches first. That's why the Stag Hunt and the chicken game are two of game theory's most fascinating models. They reveal how people balance safety and ambition, cooperation and pride, and how those choices shape outcomes in everything from business to politics. The Stag Hunt is about mutual trust. Two hunters go into the forest. They can work together to catch a stag, a big reward, or go solo and catch a rabbit. If one goes for the stag and the other plays it safe, the stag hunter gets nothing. The best outcome comes from full cooperation, but only if both commit. If either doubts the other, they're better off settling for something small. This model plays out in everyday life. Two companies might consider merging to compete better, but if one backs out, the other is left vulnerable. Or two teammates might decide to share credit, but only if they both follow through. In the Stag Hunt, the risk isn't failure, It's trusting someone who doesn't trust you back. It's a game of shared ambition built on confidence. The chicken game, by contrast, is about pride and pressure. Imagine two drivers speeding toward each other. If one swerves and the other doesn't, the one who swerves is called a chicken. If neither swerves, they crash. If both do, they avoid disaster, but lose bravado. This game is about who yields first. It's a high-stakes test of nerve, seen in everything from trade disputes to political standoffs. Each game teaches something different. The Stag Hunt shows that big rewards come from trust, but any doubt causes people to settle. The chicken game shows how stubbornness can cause disaster when both sides wait too long to blink. Together, these models help us understand how decisions unfold under pressure and how seeing the hidden structure of a situation can lead to smarter strategies in real life. Where does fairness come into play in strategic choices? People care about more than just outcomes. They care about whether those outcomes feel fair. Even in strategic decision-making, where logic and self-interest usually take the lead, fairness still holds surprising power. Most game theory models assume players act to maximize personal gain. But in real life, people often reject deals that technically benefit them if they seem unfair. A great example of this is the ultimatum game. One person gets a sum of money and offers a portion to a second person, who can either accept or reject it. If they reject it, both walk away with nothing. Logically, the second person should accept any amount. They're still getting something. But in practice, people regularly reject offers they see as insulting, like getting just 10% of the total. Even if it means losing money, they'd rather send a message than feel exploited. And that reaction isn't just emotional, it's strategic. It says, if you treat me unfairly, I won't play. This shows up in real life constantly. In business, lopsided deals often fall apart. In teams, unequal credit can cause resentment. In politics, perceived unfairness drives protest. Fairness shapes not only what people want, but also what they're willing to accept. That's why modern game theory has evolved. Behavioral game theory blends classic strategy with psychology, recognizing that emotions, values, and social norms matter. People react not only to the result, but to how it's framed, and how it reflects what they believe is right. Fairness doesn't always mean a 50-50 split. It can be based on effort, risk, or need, but across cultures, unfairness leads people to resist even at a cost. This willingness to sacrifice for fairness isn't a flaw. It's a form of strategic signaling. It says, I value dignity more than short-term gain, and it affects future negotiations and behavior. These kinds of decisions reshape expectations and discourage future unfair treatment. In other words, fairness changes the game, and when people feel disrespected, they often act not out of spite, but to protect future interactions. So fairness isn't a side factor, it's central to how people think and act in strategic settings. It guides behavior in families, teams, businesses, and diplomacy. By understanding how fairness influences decisions, game theory becomes more than math. It becomes a window into what makes human cooperation work or fail. Why do humans sometimes ignore the rational move? Sometimes people walk away from easy money, stick with bad arrangements, or pass up chances that seem obviously smart. On paper, it looks irrational, but human behavior doesn't always follow game theory's expectations. Consider the ultimatum game again. People often reject unfair offers, even if it costs them. That's not a mistake. It reflects values like fairness and self-respect. Traditional models say people maximize their benefit, but real behavior often points in another direction. People don't just chase rewards, they weigh relationships, reputations, and long-term consequences. Turning down a lopsided deal might seem irrational in the short term, but it sends a signal: I don't accept unfairness. That message can shape future behavior. Emotions also play a massive role. The smartest move on paper might carry a small chance of embarrassment or regret, which people want to avoid, especially if they've been hurt before. Another issue is uncertainty. Most real-life decisions happen with incomplete information. People estimate, guess, and rely on past experience. The rational choice doesn't always feel safe when you can't predict the other side's response. If you don't know whether someone will follow through, logic becomes fuzzy and emotion takes over. That's why game theory evolved to include behavioral insights. Behavioral game theory combines psychology with strategy. It acknowledges that people care about how things feel as much as what they pay off. Framing matters, context matters. A deal that's objectively good might still be rejected if it feels disrespectful or risky. People aren't robots. They make decisions shaped by history, emotion, identity, and instinct. So when someone ignores the rational move, it might not be irrational at all. It might be emotional intelligence, reputation management, or value signaling. Game theory still offers a roadmap, but human choices add layers of complexity that make that map more real, more flexible, and more human. What happens when emotions and strategy collide? People don't always make the most logical choice. They make the one that feels right, even when it costs them. That's what happens when emotion meets strategy. It's one of the main reasons decisions often defy cold logic. In theory, the best outcome comes from clear thinking, evaluating risks, weighing rewards, and acting accordingly. But humans aren't calculators. They feel anger, pride, fear, and insult, and those emotions shape behavior. Take a common game theory setup. Someone receives a sum of money and decides how much to share with another. The second person can accept or reject. Logically, they should take whatever they're offered. But if it feels unfair, they often say no. That reaction isn't random. It's a form of resistance. People want to feel respected. When they don't, they're willing to lose money to prove a point. That irrational choice communicates, "Don't treat me like this again." Emotions like anger or shame aren't separate from the decision. They are the decision. Someone insulted might dig in their heels. Someone afraid to look weak might avoid compromise. Someone hurt before might avoid trusting again. These emotions turn up in negotiations, standoffs, business deals, even in high-stakes diplomacy. They shape not just what people want, but what they refuse to accept. That's why emotional insight is just as valuable as strategy. Understanding what someone values, dignity, fairness, control can be the key to resolving tension. It can unlock cooperation where logic alone can cue. And knowing your own emotional triggers helps you avoid costly decisions made in a moment of heat. When emotions collide with strategy, things get messy, but they also get real. The smartest move isn't always the one with the biggest gain. It might be the one that shows respect, signals strength, or keeps a relationship intact. Emotions don't break the game. They shape it. And in a world of human decisions, knowing how feelings work is part of playing smart. Where does game theory show up in everyday life? Even small daily choices like holding the elevator or merging in traffic can involve more strategy than we realize. Game theory isn't just for business deals or war games. It shows up constantly in everyday life, just on a smaller scale. Imagine two cars trying to merge. Do you speed up or slow down? Your move depends on what you expect the other person to do. Their hesitation might invite action. Their aggression might cause you to back off. That kind of back and forth, adjusting based on others' moves, is strategy. It also appears in relationships. When to apologize, speak up, or stay quiet often depends on how we think the other person will react. Being too forceful can harm trust. Being too quiet can invite disrespect. We're constantly weighing responses, whether we realize it or not. Even texting has strategy. Do you reply right away or wait? Do you double text or hold back? These choices reflect assumptions about how others interpret timing. If someone ignores a message, you might stop reaching out. If they reply quickly, you feel encouraged. It's a quiet back and forth. That mirrors game theory's logic of mutual adjustment. Work life is full of these moves too. Should you take charge of a project or support someone else? Speak up in a meeting or play it safe? These decisions aren't just about ambition. They're shaped by social norms, reputation, and reward structures. Even shopping can be strategic. Waiting for a sale, reacting to scarcity, comparing brands, all of it involves timing, signals, and predictions. Online life reflects this too. Posting, commenting, or liking often includes a quick inner dialogue. Who will see this? How will they respond? Game theory is everywhere, not as equations, but as habits, people reading situations, making calculated moves, and adjusting based on what others might do. We don't always call it strategy, but it quietly shapes our choices every single day. Why do businesses use game theory without realizing it? Most businesses make strategic decisions every day. even if they've never heard of game theory. That's because the logic behind their choices often mirrors the same principles. Game theory is about making moves based not only on your own goals, but also on what others are likely to do. In a market full of competitors, every action happens in a shared space where others can respond. Take pricing. If a major grocery chain lowers the price of a key item, competitors may feel forced to match it or lose customers. But if everyone drops prices, profits shrink. This chain reaction isn't random, it's strategic. Each company is watching the others and adjusting in response. The same logic applies to product launches. Move too soon and risk bugs or weak demand. Move too late and lose ground. The right call depends on the competition's timing. Marketing works the same way. If one brand launches a bold emotional campaign, another might pivot to humor or practicality. It's not just creativity, it's positioning. These choices reflect a logic of contrast, competition, and timing. Businesses constantly try to shape the field, read signals, and influence what others will do next. All key concepts in game theory. Sometimes companies end up in strategic standoffs without meaning to. Two big firms might hold off on holiday discounts. Knowing a price war could hurt them both. It might look like cooperation, but it's really mutual calculation. Neither wants to be the first to cut. These patterns emerge not from formal training, but from learned behavior and observation. Whether they call it game theory or not, businesses act strategically. Every move, from pricing to partnerships, sends a message. Every silence can speak just as loudly. Smart companies adapt not through theory, but through practice. But behind that practice is a quiet logic. Anticipate, react, and influence. That's strategy, and it's game theory in action. What drives high-stakes decisions? High-stakes decisions, whether between countries, political rivals, or coalition partners, often seem chaotic from the outside. But beneath the surface, many of these moves follow a strategic logic that game theory helps illuminate. When the risks are high and the future uncertain, strategy becomes essential. Consider international diplomacy. Nations rarely act alone. Decisions like imposing sanctions, signing treaties, or offering aid aren't just about self-interest. They're also about anticipating reactions. If one country tightens trade, another may retaliate. If it sends aid, it may be trying to grow soft power. Every move is part of a sequence where each side tries to stay one step ahead. A powerful illustration is a nuclear standoff. Two armed nations know that if either attacks, retaliation ensures mutual destruction. Neither wants to be the first to strike, so both hold back. This uneasy balance mirrors the chicken game in game theory, where swerving avoids disaster. Elections follow similar logic. Candidates don't just promote their platforms. They adjust based on what others are saying. If one leans into economic policy, another may shift towards social issues. A rising third-party candidate can alter the entire conversation. These moves are calculated responses, not coincidences. Within governments, coalition building is its own game. Leaders must navigate conflicting interests, trade concessions, and preserve their influence. It's not about domination, it's about gaining just enough leverage to keep things moving. Even public statements become tools. A leader might say they won't intervene, not because it's true, but because it buys time or reduces pressure. Bluffs and signals, some loud, some subtle, shape how others act. What connects all these moments is uncertainty. No one has full information. Decisions are made using instincts, partial facts, and educated guesses. That's where game theory shines. It doesn't tell leaders exactly what to do, but it helps reveal the logic behind their choices, especially when the stakes couldn't be higher. How has game theory shaped evolution in nature? In nature, survival isn't just about being strong or fast. It's about making smart moves. Animals compete, cooperate, and adjust their behavior based on what others are doing. These patterns aren't random. Over time, they follow a strategic logic that biologists understand using game theory. It's not that animals consciously calculate strategy, but evolution naturally favors behaviors that work. Strategies that improve survival stick around. Those that don't fade away. Over generations, these survival strategies shape entire species. Take food competition. Imagine two animals fighting over a limited resource. If both go aggressive, they risk injury. If one yields, it stays safe but goes hungry. The smartest long-term approach might be to sometimes fight, sometimes back down. This is modeled in the hawk-dove game, where a balance of aggression and submission creates stability. If everyone acts like a hawk, the group suffers too many injuries. If all act like doves, resources get stolen. But with a healthy mix, the system balances itself naturally over time. Cooperation also follows this logic. Some bird species take turns acting as lookouts, while others feed. At first glance, this seems selfless. But when all take turns, every individual benefits. If one bird stops contributing, others may stop protecting it. That balance keeps the system fair and strategic, even if the birds don't consciously understand it. Among primates, grooming is more than hygiene. It's social currency. One grooms another, expecting the favor later. This tit-for-tat behavior builds alliances and reduces conflict. In tough environments, cooperation becomes a survival advantage. Even at the microscopic level, strategy applies. Some bacteria evolve to compete aggressively, others to coexist peacefully. Viruses that spread without killing their host too quickly tend to persist longer. These are strategic patterns shaped by evolutionary pressure. Game theory helps scientists model these behaviors. It shows how strategies evolve, not just in humans but across ecosystems. Strategy isn't just a human invention. It's built into how life adapts, survives, and thrives. Where do machines use game theory today? Every time your GPS reroutes you, a rideshare app adjusts prices, or an online ad competes for your attention, game theory might be at work. Machines today make decisions in environments filled with other decision-makers. They're not just executing code, they're navigating strategy. Modern AI doesn't operate in isolation. It often functions within systems where multiple agents, human or machine, have different goals. To work effectively, these systems need more than pattern recognition. They need to anticipate what others will do and respond strategically. Online marketplaces like Amazon or eBay are a great example. Sellers use automated pricing tools that constantly monitor competitors and adjust prices. If one seller drops the price, others follow. The goal isn't just to offer a good deal, it's to find a position that beats rivals while still making money. Rideshare platforms use similar logic. During high demand, surge pricing kicks in, but it's not just about increasing revenue. If prices go too high, riders drop off. If they stay too low, drivers won't log in. The system constantly adjusts, balancing supply and demand in real time, based on predicted reactions. Cybersecurity also involves game theory. AI systems guarding a network must predict how attackers, possibly AI-driven themselves, will behave. It's a back and forth of move and countermove. Defenders aim not just to respond, but to anticipate and outmaneuver threats. Self-driving cars use game-like logic too. At four-way stops or highway merges, they need to factor in human behavior. Do they yield? Accelerate? Wait? The answer depends on reading and predicting others in the moment. Even in machine learning, some AI agents are trained through repeated interactions, learning when to compete, when to cooperate. These simulations prepare AI to function in real-world environments where multiple parties shape the outcome. As AI becomes more embedded in daily life, its ability to reason in complex, strategic settings isn't just useful, it's necessary. Game theory helps machines navigate shared environments where every move matters. Why isn't game theory always accurate in the real world? Game theory offers clean logic, clear models, and sharp predictions, but real life often refuses to follow the script. The problem isn't the math, it's that reality rarely fits the assumptions those models are built on. At its core, game theory relies on three key ideas: that people are rational, that they understand the situation fully, and that they have clear preferences and access to all information. But most of the time, one or more of those assumptions fall apart. Take incomplete information. In real life, we rarely know exactly what others are thinking, planning, or capable of. A strategy that works in theory often requires insights we just don't have. In negotiations, for example, people hold back, bluff, or mislead. That uncertainty makes even the best strategies fragile. Then there's irrational behavior. Game theory assumes logical choices, but people act on emotion. Pride, fear, anger, or principle can override calculated self-interest. Someone might reject a fair offer out of spite, or take a reckless stand to save face. These aren't random moves, they're meaningful. But they don't fit tidy equations. Real-world rules also shift. Incentives change, new players appear, or the stakes evolve. A strategy that works today might flop tomorrow. Two companies may avoid a price war for years until a new competitor forces them to rethink everything. Cultural context matters too. What counts as fair, cooperative, or aggressive varies widely. A strategy that makes sense in one society might backfire in another. Game theory uses universal logic, but people live in specific, nuanced realities. That's why modern game theory increasingly incorporates behavioral insights. Models now include uncertainty, emotional bias, and learning, but even the best versions can't capture every twist of human behavior. Game theory remains a powerful lens, but not a perfect map, because people don't always follow the rules. And that's what makes them unpredictable and fascinating. What are the limits of predicting human behavior through games? Game-based models simplify complicated decisions. They break things down into players, choices, motivations, and payoffs. In the right setting, this approach reveals patterns in how people respond. But when it comes to real human lives, messy, emotional, inconsistent, there are limits to how far that logic goes. One big limit is the assumption of consistency. Models expect people to behave the same way in similar situations. But in reality, decisions change with context, mood, or personal history. Someone might act cooperatively one day, then turn defensive the next, even if the situation looks identical. Another challenge is information. Many models assume players understand the rules and know what others might do. But most real-life choices are made in the dark. People guess, misunderstand, or miss crucial details. What looks irrational may just be a result of bad or missing information. People's goals also shift. What matters most to someone, money, reputation, freedom, can change over time. A person negotiating today might prioritize salary. Tomorrow it might be work-life balance. That makes long-term predictions slippery. Then there's emotion. Game theory expects rational calculation. But decisions are often influenced by fear, guilt, pride, or anxiety. Someone might stay quiet in a meeting out of nervousness, not because it's strategic, or reject a great offer because they feel insulted. These layers are hard to capture in equations. Even in structured settings, voting, legal disputes, workplace dynamics, people break patterns. They delay out of courtesy, give up leverage to build trust, or do something inefficient just because it feels right. Behavioral models now try to account for this. They include habits, biases, and data from psychology and neuroscience, but they still can't predict everything. Game theory helps frame possibilities and patterns, but humans are unpredictable. Emotion, experience, and context shift from one moment to the next. That's the limit of prediction, and the beauty of being human. Why might some games never end or keep changing rules? Not every game ends with a final move. Some just keep going, morphing as they unfold. The players shift, the rules evolve, and the endpoint, if there is one, keeps moving. These aren't rare outliers. They're surprisingly common in real life. Traditional strategy often focuses on closed games, fixed players, clear rules, and a defined win condition. Like chess, two sides, one winner, game over. But most real-world scenarios don't follow that structure. There's no final buzzer or neat conclusion. The rules bend, players rotate, and goals evolve. Take politics. Leadership changes, alliances shift, and new crises emerge. A negotiation that starts 1 year can carry on for decades as new people enter. Priorities change and progress resets. The game continues not because no one wants resolution, but because the players and their motivations keep changing. Rules can also change when circumstances shift. Two companies may start out competing for customers. Then the race turns to innovation, later survival under tighter regulations. The game reshapes itself. What counted as winning before may no longer apply. Some games don't end because it's more rewarding to keep them going. A business might prolong a legal battle to block a competitor. A political party might avoid compromise to keep its supporters energized. In these cases, delay itself is the strategy. There's also the problem of unclear goals. In diplomacy, public opinion, or climate negotiations, what does winning even mean? Without a clear endpoint, every decision becomes just one move in an ongoing sequence. The game stretches on. Even personal dynamics work this way. Friendships shift. Workplace norms evolve. What's acceptable one day may cause conflict the next. Social rules are often unwritten and always changing. These evolving games challenge the idea of a perfect plan. Success isn't about finding the final move. It's about staying flexible. When players, rules, and objectives constantly shift, the real advantage is adaptability. Not winning, but continuing to play well. When can changing the rules be the smartest strategy? Sometimes, the smartest move isn't to play harder, it's to change the game altogether. Many strategies assume the game's conditions are fixed, but in real life, those conditions are often more flexible than they seem. The rules? They're not set in stone, they're built on assumptions, and assumptions can be challenged. Changing the rules doesn't always mean breaking them. It might mean redefining what winning looks like, shifting the goalposts, or introducing a new way to keep score. These moves can open up strategies that didn't exist before. Take business. Two companies in a pricing war might drive profits into the ground, but instead of continuing to compete on price, one could pivot, offering a premium service, bundling products, or building a loyal community. They haven't quit. They've changed the game. Now they're competing on a different axis. Politics works the same way. A party losing repeatedly under a majoritarian. Voting system might push for electoral reform, like ranked choice or proportional voting. That doesn't guarantee victory, but it creates space for different outcomes. They're not trying to win the old game. They're changing what winning means. In personal life, rule changing can be subtle but powerful. Imagine a workplace where loud voices always get credit. One quieter team member might start tracking contributions, advocating for transparency, or building feedback systems. They haven't rebelled. They've rewritten how success is measured. Even in negotiation, introducing a new topic, a shared goal, a third-party mediator, or a fresh concession can break the deadlock. It's not about forcing agreement. It's about expanding the frame so new options become visible. What all these moves share is awareness. Rule changers understand the game deeply. They recognize when the structure itself is the problem. And when it's time to shift the playing field, they're not ignoring the system. They're redesigning it from the inside. And sometimes that's not just smart, it's the only path forward. What would life look like if we all understood game theory? Imagine pulling up to a four-way stop, where every driver instantly knew what the others were likely to do. No hesitation. No power plays, just smooth, cooperative movement. That's the kind of world we might see if everyone had a basic grasp of game theory, not perfect foresight, but better coordination. Game theory teaches that your best choice depends on what others are likely to do. When people understand that, they begin to make decisions that are not only smarter for themselves but also more predictable and often more beneficial for others. In everyday life, this mindset changes how people handle conflict. Instead of lashing out, someone might pause, weigh incentives, and respond in a way that lowers tension. Arguments stop being about winning and start being about finding moves that work for everyone. It also changes how people cooperate. Trust becomes less fragile. If both sides understand that long-term gain depends on mutual reliability, they're more likely to stick to commitments, not just for moral reasons, but because it makes strategic sense. Even competition evolves. Rivals learn the difference between destructive zero-sum games and win-win scenarios. Instead of racing to the bottom, they might know when to pull back, collaborate, or simply compete smarter. Leadership, teaching, and parenting become more thoughtful. Instead of leaning solely on rules or rewards, decision-makers focus on designing environments that nudge people toward better choices. Incentives get smarter. Outcomes get more stable. At higher levels, governments, businesses, diplomacy, shared strategy logic can reduce gridlock. When all sides understand concepts like trust building, reputation, or mutual concessions, it becomes easier to find common ground, even with competing interests. This isn't about turning people into cold calculators. It's about offering a better lens. When you see not just your options, but how your actions ripple through others, you make sharper, calmer, more intentional decisions. The result? A world that's not conflict-free, but one where outcomes are fairer, surprises fewer, and progress more possible. It's not perfect, but it's better. And it starts with understanding strategy. Why does seeing life as a game sometimes help us navigate it? life can feel overwhelming until you zoom out and view it as a game, not in a trivial or playful way, but as a system with players, rules, patterns, and choices. That shift in mindset can make confusion feel manageable and stress feel strategic. Thinking this way doesn't mean treating life like a competition. It means realizing that many situations follow a structure. People have goals. They respond to incentives. They adjust based on what others do, just like in a game, even if no one calls it that. This perspective can reveal logic in chaos. Take the workplace. A colleague who seems uncooperative might just be reacting to incentives, pressure from above, competition for promotions, fear of being left out. They're not difficult. They're playing a game they think they have to win. In relationships, misunderstandings often stem from unspoken rules or mismatched strategies. Seeing it as a cooperative game where trust, communication, and effort are the moves helps. Both sides stay aligned and adjust. When things shift, even high-stakes moments feel more manageable through this lens. Giving a speech, making a big decision, resolving an argument, it helps to remember others have their own fears, strategies, and constraints. You're not alone in the game. Thinking this way also builds healthy detachment, not apathy, but perspective. If a plan doesn't work, you revise your strategy. You don't take it personally or panic. That clarity reduces frustration and boosts resilience. It also encourages flexibility. Good players don't stick to one move. They adapt. When life throws a curveball, it doesn't break you. It's just a new stage of play. Seeing life as a game won't solve everything, but it gives you a structure to navigate uncertainty, reduce emotional noise, and make better choices. The game will always be unpredictable, but with the right mindset, you can play it with more insight, more control, and less fear. Where do we go from here in the future of game theory? Game theory began with a simple goal: understand how people make decisions when those decisions depend on others. But today, it's far more than a tool for economists or diplomats. It's a framework being woven into AI, global policy, public systems, and everyday life. The early models were neat. Few players, clear outcomes, fixed rules. They helped us understand auctions, negotiations, and voting behavior. But real life doesn't stay tidy. People change their minds. New players enter. The rules shift. The future of game theory is about adapting to that mess. One major shift is happening in artificial intelligence. Today's machines don't just follow instructions, they make strategic decisions. Self-driving cars, for example, share roads with unpredictable drivers and pedestrians. They need to reason strategically in real time, not just follow code, but adapt like humans. Multi-agent systems are another frontier. These are environments where many independent players, humans, software, robots interact. Think drone fleets, smart grids, or decentralized finance. To manage coordination and conflict, game theory is evolving to model thousands of players at once. Game theory is also merging with behavioral science. Researchers are building models that incorporate emotion, habits, and cultural context. Real people don't always follow rational strategies, and future models are embracing that. They're not just trying to predict ideal moves. They're trying to understand real ones. These ideas are shaping everything from public policy to platform design. How do you encourage healthier online behavior? How do you manage cooperation in climate negotiations? Game theory is helping us answer those questions, not just by describing choices, but by designing systems that guide better ones. The future of game theory isn't about finding perfect strategies. It's about building environments that support smarter, more sustainable decisions by people and machines alike. As technology grows more complex and connected, strategy won't just be an advantage, it will be essential. And game theory will be the blueprint we use to keep up.